All right, hello there. We're live with Peggy Chapman today doing a Q&A since so many people have been interested to hear what she has to say. We brought her back. This is our very last Facebook summer series. I'm Tressa Haney. I'm with Peggy Chapman, as I mentioned. So if you're joining us or you're hopping on, please ask your questions in the comment box and we'll get to them. Let us know where you're watching from. Please share this video because you never know who's stuck somewhere. There might be a valuable piece of information. And if you're watching on the replay, don't hesitate to also let us know where you're watching from. We'll still go back and check and see all those things. So hello, Peggy. How are you?
Hello, Tressa. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm just going to share this over onto my own Facebook page so that we can let people know that we're live. Just for a second. So I can't do it. So this is our last summer series, Facebook Live, and we're going to cover a lot of things, including answering some people's questions that they had on the Facebook page. We're also going to talk about how to become a member, what membership gets you, upcoming events. We're going to recap the whole summer. So maybe we should talk about memberships. So today or yesterday, I think it was, we had a request on the post that I posted, and I'm just going to bring it up so I can see, and I'll read it exactly while we're waiting for some people to jump on. Give me 1 second here. And it was a specific question about people's, this woman was asking about her great-great-grandmother.
Oh, right.
So we had briefly talked about this, and that question kind of isn't for today because that requires research.
That's right.
So although those questions, somebody might have the answer. And when I bring it up, I'm going to read it out loud in case somebody out there watching actually might know something about it. Exactly. But so I guess what I'm getting at is when you're a member, if you had a question like that, how would you ask that question?
You can always send a query to info@novascotiaancestors.ca and it will get redirected. GANS isn't able to do research for you. We can direct you in the right direction and perhaps help you in that regard. We may be able to look at some sources. There are sources that are member-only sources, so you would have to be a member to get that information. But generally, what we are doing at this point is being navigators for people in how to do their own research and point out maybe a specific type of research that they might not be aware of that we know that is suitable for theirs. But no, you're quite right, Tressa. We do not have, we're a volunteer organization and we don't have the capacity to undertake at this point doing people's research. But in the future that may change. But at this point, that's where we have to stand. So
that's where it sits right now. So now we did talk about family files a couple of weeks ago. So this person, as soon as I bring her up here, she could essentially, make a family file. And then if somebody comes into the office and searches in that family file and they have a piece of information, they could add it to the file. But would somebody get notified? Like if somebody...
Well, generally speaking, when you are putting in family file information because you have you have a brick wall, you've reached a brick wall in your research and you don't know where to move from there. And you're hoping, like you say, that the right person comes along and says, oh my gosh, that line is in my family. And so what you do is you put your email address, usually that's what people do, and so people can just take the email. We don't have to be the go-betweens. It's a direct thing. So if you are looking, and if you are not in the office looking at it, we can look it up for you. And at that time, someone in the libraries would provide you with the email address that was left. Now, we all know that if it wasn't updated, it could not be the right email address any longer. But that's up to the individual providing the information. So it
Yeah.
is a really good way to say, I'm looking for this. This is where the gap is in my research. And if you happen to be able to find that information because it's part of your family, then that's absolute. That's what Genealogy Society is all about, really.
I think it's really cool how everybody's families sort of, not everybody's, but there are
Yeah,
families that
some families.
intertwine, and
Yeah,
then you know something and somebody else knows something. And then,
exactly.
it's just like a huge puzzle. I mean, you guys probably already know all that, but for me, it's, as I'm
It is a
learning.
puzzle, and that's the appeal of it all. It's puzzle. It's like a
The
doing
addictive
major.
part of it.
Yeah.
So actually, I found the comment. It was from a Deborah Turner.
Oh,
So if Deborah comes on and watches the replay or comes on while we're live,
okay.
it was her fourth great grandmother, Martha Greenwood,
Mm-hmm.
birth 1980, no, 1788. Between 1788 and 1790, she's not sure, in Barrington, Nova Scotia.
Okay.
Married to John Tardy Porter. And
Okay.
then she said, she's my brick wall. I can't find her in Barrington. Her daughters, Maria and Martha, are both my third great grandmothers. Thanks a bunch. She says, so I'm wondering, is there something
What would
about
she do? Yeah. It sounds like there's just a gap there because she knows the woman's daughters. So she's got information that has taken her to the daughters, and she knows that the woman was born, roughly around when she was born and who she married. So it's the in between. She wants to know about probably her death or what her life. Now Barrington is a good place to have a brick wall because there's a huge amount that's been written about Barrington and the people in that
okay.
Barrington Township book. So we have books in our library. There probably are also family files that might be applicable. I'm not actually familiar with that specific surname, and that she could then, if she could ask someone to check for her, and particularly if she's a member, then they would be able to provide her with some information. And if there isn't anything, then she can provide what she has in an organized way. You can't just, when you're writing something on a Facebook post, you don't have to put it as organized as you would you want to say, I know that she was born 1788, I think is what you said.
Well, it looks like she has 1788 to 1790. She might not be quite sure when she was.
Okay, so she's actually looking for more. Yeah, in 17 in that era, in Barrington, you were either a New England planter or there eventually could be loyalists in that area as well. So that helps you to narrow down the focus. And surnames, as I mentioned, surnames are well written. Now, there won't be official birth records, and one of the things that you probably would be looking for, and not just Debbie Turner, is it? But many people that are
Yeah, Deborah Turner.
looking
Yeah.
for uh, information from that period of time will be using things that are called the township books, where they record birth death. They're not official government records at that time.
Okay.
And the township, the people who run the town, so to speak, collected a lot of that information, and that might be all that you get if there wasn't. Although I believe that at that time in Barrington, there were churches established, so she would also be able to find church records. And
Okay.
most of the people were Baptist at the time, which causes a different problem. But basically,
We've been through that
you have to
before.
go and start. You often in genealogy, finding no information is as helpful as finding some, because you have to say these are the normal places you would look for that kind of information, and if that doesn't exist or it's not in there and you've looked, you have to make note of that and say, okay, I've eliminated this, because it does somewhat become a process of elimination. But
Mhm.
Barrington is a good place to have a brick wall.
That's good. That's good. See, now I think she could probably draw a lot of nuggets out of that little spiel about Barrington. But I've heard about the Baptist churches not having such great records
No.
back then. So if anybody has a question, please put it in the comments. This is the last time we're going to be on here doing this for quite a while, I think. So if you have something you'd like to know, please ask Peggy. So my name is Tressa Haney, and I'm with Peggy Chapman. Peggy, you're the vice chair of GANS. No, I always want to call it GANS Nova Scotia. GANS, because the NS would imply Nova Scotia, I guess. Tell us where you're watching from and who you are. How are you connected to Nova Scotia? So we brought a couple books out to talk about.
Yeah, only more as not so much the books themselves, but a number of people inquire, of course, about Scottish history in Nova Scotia and Scottish genealogy. And again, the earlier you go back, the more difficult it is to find information. However, there are some sources that you can use similar to what we just talked about. It's always a process of elimination. You look first here, you see, are they there? So one book that these are all secondary sources, and this might be an appropriate time to have a little bit of a chat about a secondary
Okay,
source.
yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, a secondary source means you're not looking at an original birth record, you're not looking at a death certificate or anything like that. You're looking at something that has been transcribed or gathered in some other way and put in a collection. So obviously there's room for error, and you never accept it as a primary source or it's derivative is another way of saying it. And so there's a book, for example, called, I'll just show this. It's, of course, you're going to see the printing, I think, reversed. But anyway, it's a Scottish dictionary, a dictionary of Scottish emigrants to Canada before Confederation by a guy named Donald White, and that's White with the Whyte. And
Oh,
basically, they have transcribed from a huge number of varying resources, anything from ships, passenger lists, and onward, of people who came into Canada before Confederation. Because when you were looking at pre-Confederation in 1867, that there is no such thing as a national census. There's no, you're always you're always looking at things broken up by provinces, and that not all of the areas of Canada, as we know it now, would have been included. So even when you're looking at a census record in the early years, you have to look at what provinces are actually included in that, because you won't have, in most cases, the Western provinces. But that's another story.
yeah.
So going back to the Scots, here you have something, everything before it would be captured in a more formal way in Confederation. So this book is actually been published by the Ontario Society, Genealogy Society, which seems odd, but it was great that they did it. And it is a great resource to first check and see what do they have. For example, here's Donald Gunn, 1797 to 30 November 1878. So that tells you they have an actual death. What do they know? Where did they get their resources? And it will tell you where he got his information, so then you can follow it up. Great little resource.
So where
Another
would you
really
get the
nice
book?
book
Can you find
is,
those in regular libraries or?
you will find that in many places. Now, I cannot attest to what you would find in a US library, and I know we have
Right.
a lot of people who follow us from the United States, but um, any genealogy society may have a copy of that.
Okay.
Another thing is that I have on occasion found that a database of, just see someone commenting. I got
Yeah.
distracted there because I was
Sorry.
reading the comment. But that some of the subscription databases will have some of this information in here. It's just that you don't get to browse it in the same way.
Yeah.
So another book is After the Hector. So you can't know very much about Nova Scotia if you don't know what the hector is and you're a Scot. So that's kind of the Mayflower of Scottish arrival in Nova Scotia in Pictou County. And sometimes, like anything like that, is what happened. This was the big beginning of the big Scottish emigration, and what happened after that. So that's why the book is called After the Hector. And Lucille Campy is wonderful. She's written a whole series of genealogical and history books, and you will have full passenger ships transcribed in here. You will have all the context that you need. And notice she said the Scottish pioneers of Nova Scotia and Cape Breton. So many, it's kind of two distinct types of emigration here, the Pictou side and the Cape Breton side, and she covers both. And her last name is Campey, and those books are very, very available everywhere. Anything by Campy is going to be good.
Is her first name
And
Lucy, did you say?
pardon me?
What did you say her first name was?
Oh, Lucille. Sorry.
Lucille. I'll just write her
Lucille.
name in case people want to. And
That's great. Yeah.
Campey.
And we have a number of her book, about 6 of her books in the
Okay.
library here. So
Are they
certainly if
for
you're in this
purchase
area,
or just are they for purchase or do you just have them here as a resource?
we have them in the library as a
Okay.
resource. Yeah.
Okay.
But if you want to purchase one of these books, they're widely available on things like Amazon and that. Yeah. And then one of my favorites and everybody's favorites who's done any is sometimes Terry Punch, who we've talked about because we're having an event in October, is
Right.
very closely associated with Irish history, which of course he is. But he also has done some similar work for the early Scots. And this is a 3-volume selection where he looks at any number of resources. And as you can see, it's just full. It's again secondary, it's transcribed from maybe primary resources, maybe not. And I know that when I look, if somebody is looking for information about their early Scottish ancestor and they're not even sure if they went to Nova Scotia or if they started in PEI or whatever, this is Maritime Canada. So, of course, Maritime Canada includes Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick. Does not include Newfoundland because then it has to be Atlantic Canada, which gets confusing for people who don't live here.
Right.
But
Right.
it again, what you do with these types of resources, you look up, you see some possible candidates for your ancestor, and then you further research.
So it's a clue. It's a
their
lead.
navigation points.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just an example, and they don't have to be exactly these books. I think it's more important to think, here's, if you don't know much, what can I find out by starting with some kind of resource like this?
Okay.
And if you go on our library, and in the library database, you put in subject, Scottish ancestors or Scottish Canadians, then you will get a list of books and you can see whether they're these kind of books. And
Right.
if you're not in Halifax or Dartmouth, then you can look in your local library.
Cool. Well, that's really good to know. And yeah, I think that is a good thing to point out between the Maritimes, which is just Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island, and Atlantic Canada would be Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland and Labrador. So we have a comment here from the Genealogical Association of Nova Scotia. Somebody's catching a bit of us before they go sailing, and it must be somebody that's on board. Pardon me?
Who's that catching a bit before we go sailing?
Yes. Oh. So it must be somebody that's
it's Verona.
Verona. Okay.
She's our tech advisor. Yeah.
Okay. So
hi, Verona.
Hello, have fun sailing. I also saw this Kelly Nickerson watching from Greenwood, which we were posted to 14 Wing Greenwood for a couple of years. Loved it. But you're from Barrington, so if you know any of the Greenwoods.
And I have Nickersons in my family history,
Oh,
originating in Barrington.
So tell us about that.
Maybe we'll match on a DNA test or something. But yes, and if again, I find it really easy to find information on the original families that settled in the Barrington area. My particular line that's in my line then decided to move up the coast to closer to Halifax and Sambro, and then that's where. But they used to go back all the time to Barrington, so it's a very, very. There's some very good sources now. They will have a lot of errors in them because some of them have just been done by word of mouth. But it's the whole thing again. You don't dismiss it or you don't take it without checking it out. So it's a starting point for everyone. So yep. So Kelly's lucky to have the Nickerson name.
There you go, Kelly. Or maybe she married into it. Who knows?
Yes, she could
have. So the next thing that we should talk about, I just had something in my head and I completely lost it. we were going to talk about Terry Punch a little bit maybe, and he's obviously written a lot about
Mhm.
Irish descendants. Is that the whole thing that he writes about, or does he do other? Did he
Yeah,
do
he
other?
has another, his other, sorry, just a second here. My
Sure,
earpiece fell out.
plug
There.
yourself in.
Okay. So the Terry has the Irish was probably his biggest thing, and that's where he received, I think, the most acknowledgement, including his acknowledgement from the Irish Society in Ireland. So
Oh,
it's not just in Canada that he's been recognized, but he hasn't done a lot with Scots. Like, this is one of the things that he has done. But
hmm,
his other main area of interest was with the foreign Protestants, which we've talked about before, the
right.
people who settled in Lunenburg and who came. He has done like the Montbéliard, because I think Terry's own ancestry had a Montbéliard ancestor, and he has done a lot of work on those. And I would say the foreign Protestants were not always as uh, spoken about as some of the other settler groups in
Hmm.
Nova Scotia. And I would say that Terry was one of the people who was instrumental on bringing it back to people's forefront in the 2000s.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So I should point out that Terry has since passed away, and
Yes.
so in the fall, you guys, are
Your part.
having. I won't be here, but are having a tribute to Terry.
Yes, a memorial event. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, at the Central Library here in
Yeah.
Halifax. It's going to
Right.
be on October
23rd.
23rd,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that you're
At
here.
6:30 p.m., I think. Oh my God, I'm having trouble with my. Okay,
Oh,
and it basically it was arranged to bring in someone who was familiar with Terry's work and who also knew him personally, and
mhm,
that person is Dr. Bruce Elliott, who's an historian at the University of Ottawa. So he has done. Work as well in the area, mostly Irish to my
mhm,
knowledge. And so he's doing a memorial lecture, and then it's an opportunity for all the groups of people who Terry reached out to, because Terry was one of those often unique people who is able to straddle the world of serious academic work to, he was of course well known as the person on CBC radio on a show called Maritime Noon, where people could call in and say, my, I have ancestors named such and such, and I'm wondering where I should look for them. And Terry could always tell you what county they were associated with, and he'd have to. So he has a lot of people who knew him. There, one of the things that I have seen is we have. I've seen many things in some of the books that Terry gave to Gans, where he has letters and things. People wrote to him from everywhere asking for some help. And back in the days when people wrote letters, and it makes you realize what a piece of information we lose now in our contemporary world, is that you don't have that information anymore. So he had a
right.
very broad uh, exposure, I guess it would be the word, and was not probably, he was the first of his kind, I would say, in Nova Scotia. I don't know if we have anybody to replace him. So
Yeah.
he's a very well respected individual.
So it's going to be a real treat to listen to his friend Dr. Bruce speak of
Exactly.
him
Dr.
and
Elliott.
Dr. Elliott,
Bruce is the first name.
Bruce
Yeah, it's all good.
Elliott. Yes. It's one of those days. If I don't have it all written in front of me, I can't remember.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a real treat to probably for Dr. Elliott to actually come and speak of his friend as
that's
well.
right.
So
And
there's
Terry's
seating
and
for,
Terry's widow will be there, and we're hoping that a lot of people who knew him from his CBC radio call-in show might.
right.
It's for everyone. It's for
Yes.
everyone to attend. There's no cost,
So
by the way. It's a public event, so
yeah, it's free and
yep,
there's 300 seats. Sounds like a lot, but Terry was quite popular. So if you are planning on coming, you should get there early, get your seat and that kind of thing, because we expect a full room, and just to listen to some of the really great work he's done, which includes starting GANS or being a part of the starting founding members of GAN, that's for sure. So I'm Tressa Haney. I'm here with Peggy Chapman. If you have questions, please write in and let us know. We had Carolyn Sims, or Carolyn Sims Black is saying hello from British Columbia.
Hello.
And we have, I haven't seen any of our American friends here. Usually they're the first ones to pop on. I'm always so
I think
excited.
I think leading up to the holiday weekend in
Yeah.
both our country and theirs is
Yeah.
perhaps it's a big vacation week,
Everybody's
especially.
on vacation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's okay. We're happy for everybody that's here. That's for sure. Because we have 20 viewers right now. So that's really good.
Ah,
So please
and
let
it's
us
very
know.
hot out.
Yeah, it's hot in Nova Scotia. It's
Yeah,
like 30 degrees here
yeah,
today.
all summer.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, please also let us know where you're watching from. We always like that, and how you're connected to Nova Scotia. We talk a lot about Lunenburg. We talk a lot
Mhm.
about like that, like the South Shore of Nova Scotia. But I'm wondering, um, is is there anything of interest about other parts of the province?
Oh no, there's nothing interesting
Nothing.
in other
They're
parts. No.
just
The each part, like one of the things that, of course, we have Cape Breton, which is, I think sometimes we forget to look at it too much because we just assume everybody knows about the Scottish history in Cape Breton.
mhm,
Another thing that we haven't talked about, which covers, we haven't said much about Acadian. Uh,
right. Yeah.
in and of course, Acadian descendants are in all ends of the province and in the mid, like there's the southern Nova Scotia,
Hmm.
and then we have a large number of Acadian descendants in Cape Breton. So the Arichat, those kind of things. And they're another group. Well, you sometimes think, well, people know very well about the Acadians, but sometimes there are some misunderstandings about Acadians, but they do have a very well researched genealogy. So often you can find a lot of material. They had one of the first census, because before, when it was New France and before it was, the British colony permanently, the French were in charge, and so they made a great effort at bringing people over to settle, whereas the British did not. And so in Annapolis Royal, which was permanent settlement since 1604, you
Wow.
had a lot of wrench, and many people today are still descendants of those original, because even though we had our, the thing that everybody knows about, the Grand Dérangement, which was the expulsion of the Acadians, and the Evangeline poem, and that celebrated in Grand Pré, which not celebrate. I guess you don't celebrate an expulsion, acknowledges, but a lot of the people after the period of expulsion calmed down, there were many people who returned. There were other people who actually never left Acadie. They hid out in less notable areas, and then when things were calmed down again, they were able to come out. So there were a lot of people that settled outside of Halifax in areas called Chesapeake, and that area, which are who are of Acadian descent, and they're people who actually, to the bit that I know about them, they're people who never left Nova Scotia, even though the expulsion was going on. So there's so many different things about Acadians, and it's a fascinating history, because it's so early, and it is so amazing to be able to see some of the records. I think I might have mentioned before that on Nova Scotia Archives website, they have digital copy of the church records from from the
Wow.
Port Royal, and they're in old French, and they're not always, but they have actually translated the transcription. If you know French, of course, you want to read it in the original, because there's
Yeah.
always something lost in translation, as they say. But it's fascinating to be able to read that. There also is a large history where the Acadians were uh, did quite well with the Mi'kmaq, the original Aboriginal population, as opposed to the Brits. The Brits did not have as good a relationship, but the French did, and so you will find intermarriage in the early years, and that many people, when doing their DNA testing,
Hmm.
will find that they have mixes of different things. But it's, again, it's fascinating history, and it's amazing that to this day the the Francophonie in Nova Scotia have been able to maintain. There were periods of time where they went through difficult periods with the English world, but now they have captured their culture in New Brunswick, of course. There's huge number of
Right. Yeah.
Acadians, but a lot of the time they're connected. And some of the Acadians in New Brunswick are some of the original people that came to Port Royal and Annapolis, but they left and moved across to Acadia. So that's we have some good resources in here. As I say, you can always look in the library to see what's there. There's some very good resources on the Nova Scotia archives as well. So
Cool.
there's a
My
group.
brother-in-law's father is from they're Lawlers. He's from New Brunswick and he's an
Oh, okay.
Acadian. Yeah. So let's get to some comments because there's some coming in. So Kelly Nickerson, our friend from Barrington, has a question.
Yes.
Are records available? I'll put it up on the screen and then
Okay.
maybe you can read it. I'm not sure. Are records available from social services agencies concerning families that were broken up and children adopted into families or sent to farms and homes to work?
Okay. Yeah.
Also, are almshouse and poor
Almshouse and poorhouse records. There are some almshouse and poorhouse records available at the Nova Scotia archives. Absolutely. So it does depend on what time frame you're talking about, because social services is a fairly modern
right?
institution, and I wouldn't be able to comment on social services because it is not, the records that they have are not available, and that would not, depending on, again, on the time frame that you're speaking of, it could be that it is not what we would call genealogy. It's not previous, it's not far back
It's
enough.
not old enough.
But if she has, I would suggest that she go and see what's available through the Nova Scotia archives. If the almshouse is an older version, and that's what she might be looking for. If it's relation to an adoption or something like that, then the Nova Scotia adoption records are, to my knowledge, still not available. They are in many provinces, but DNA can help you with adoptions. So it really depends. If Kelly wants to send an email to info at and put my name on it, then I can maybe address it a little more.
Kelly, I'm just going to put
Yeah.
the address up here. Can't quite see what I'm typing well, so just
Info at
anybody,
yeah, you've got
if
it.
anybody sees a mistake, let me know. Okay, so let me see. I'm gonna go up here. So Betty Jeffrey, hi from PEI.
Oh my gosh. Hi there, Betty.
And Betty says she has some Collicut and Bradshaw lines from Lunenburg.
Okay. So those aren't foreign Protestants, though, I don't think. They don't sound, unless the Collicut evolved from a German or Swiss name. But probably just because you're from Lunenburg doesn't mean that you're a foreign Protestant. There are many different people who settled there. So, yes, so Betty is, I knew she had Nova Scotia, and she's a PEI person as well, very involved with the PEI Genealogy Society, I think, although she can tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, thanks for watching, Betty. Maybe we'll have you on for an interview for PEI. Sherry Gray. She's found lots of interesting information in the Merrill family in the last few weeks and has lots of DNA matches, but no mention of them in your family
Oh,
tree. So how does that
okay.
shake out?
Okay, so the DNA topic is a very in-depth one, and obviously in this format, we can only superficially look at it. But one thing that you have to keep in mind when you're doing your DNA and your traditional genealogy is that you really have two family trees. You have your genetic family tree and your paper-based family tree. So I could have a second cousin that I know is my second cousin because of paper. I know
Yeah.
that they are. And they don't show up, and they go do a DNA test and they don't show up on mine as a match. But they might show up on my brother's as a match. There's a certain amount of randomness to DNA. The more space that you go, and when you inherit 50% of your DNA from your mother and 50% of your DNA from your father, it doesn't mean that it's the same DNA that your brother gets, or that if you're a cousin in the mother's line, doesn't mean that your cousins all get that same DNA.
Right.
There's a bit of randomness. So when you don't have people showing up on both, it doesn't mean that there's a problem. We hear a lot about one of the terms that was used, and I think that's falling out of favor now, is an NPE, which was a non-parental event. So that sometimes people innocently go do DNA and find out things they maybe didn't want to know. And and that's not what this necessarily is. It just because you don't have some matches that you think you should have does not mean that like it's a problem.
Yeah.
So the other thing too is nothing ever replaces traditional genealogy. DNA is a tool, and it is not when you're using Y-DNA, and without again going into too much detail, Y-DNA is the male line DNA, which does not break up, like the randomness that I was mentioning. That Y-DNA is not random. You can go back hundreds of years and you will find father's 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 father. And so therefore, in terms of paternity, it can be very useful. With the DNA that most people are testing with, which is called autosomal DNA, which is AUTOSOMAL DNA, and that's what you get when you do an ancestry test or MyHeritage or whatever. Um, that is not as concrete as, say, Y-DNA. And you also want to keep in mind that it really is only considered to be by the experts as reliable to 5 generations. So the further back, and when you think about it, if you have 50% of your DNA from your mother, then you have 25% of your DNA from your mother's parents, and then it goes to 12%, and then it goes to
Right.
6%. So by the time you get to the 5th generation, it can be pretty shaky, and that's why you could have a second cousin that you don't match with.
Right.
So the other thing is that there are times when people say, oh my gosh, look at this, I have actually found somebody and it's 7 generations ago. So it must work for 7 generations. And sometimes the explanation for that is that there's a strand of DNA. Like, well, think of it in segments. There's segments of DNA on your chromosomes, and that you have, for some reason or other, there's a segment that keeps track, it keeps following. It's a straw. And so it may take you further back than is the norm, but that doesn't mean it is outside the norm. And that's
Right.
exactly what
So it's like finding a lead in the transcribed things. It's just one more
exactly.
tool for your toolbox
Exactly.
to
And it
have.
depends what your goal is in your DNA. What are you looking for? I mean, the most obvious one, there are many, it's proved extremely useful for people who are adoptees and don't know who their
Right.
biological parents are. It has proved very useful for that, especially in places like here, where you can't get necessarily some of the adoption information from
Mhm.
the provincial government. So the yeah, it's a big topic, as we've mentioned already. If you are in the metro area, in November we will be having a 2-part workshop on DNA that I'll be conducting, and the first, it's in 2 sessions, 2 hours, 2 sessions of 2 hours each, and there's about 3 weeks between them. And in the first one, we'll be going over some of the what do you need to know before you even do a test. There are about 5 players now in the test. There used to be only a couple. And then in the second one, it's literally, looking at, okay, now I've got the people, my matches, what do I do with them? And what is it that I'm trying to prove? That type of thing. So, if you are in the metro area, I can't remember off the top of my head what the cost is, but it's not high.
Yeah. And so should people, I was kind of telling people when I did the unboxing of
Yes.
the DNA, they should get it now and do their DNA test so that when you do the workshop, they have something to work with, but they don't necessarily have to do that.
They do not necessarily,
Okay.
okay, have to do that, because there are some times when people are not really sure what test is going to meet their needs, and it might
Right.
be that the autosomal test that we refer to is not going to meet their needs, and they need to get a Y DNA test.
Okay.
So it depends. Most people, it's not going to hurt one way or another, because generally, with the promotion that's been done on DNA testing, there are a lot of times when people are getting DNA tests and not really knowing a lot, about the background. So it doesn't help it, no matter what. It takes a while to get your test results back. So that's why it doesn't really matter one way or another.
Okay. Good to know. That's a correction on my part. Sorry about that, guys. If you ran out and bought your DNA kit to get it
Oh,
done.
it's going to be weeks before they get any results, so it doesn't matter.
So we have, okay, so Kelly just wanted to let us know, and you might know more about this, that she is Barrington 902 on
I did see
Ancestry.
that. Yeah,
So
and
does that mean you can hook up with
basically
people?
she has no what yeah what she had on Ancestry. She obviously has a subscription, paid subscription to
Okay.
Ancestry, and that is her password, so to speak, or her login name, whatever
Yeah.
the name that's used. And so what that means is that I can go and look at her family tree
Okay.
on that she's put on, and maybe we're cousins because, as I
Maybe.
say, I have
Maybe.
Nickerson in my family.
So yeah, I mean, definitely if you have a
Yeah.
username posted in the comments, anybody, because then somebody can, you have the same names,
If
maybe.
some people like to share, and just to say, this is going back a bit to DNA, is that some people use something called GEDmatch, and they put up their GEDmatch ID number.
Mhm.
We're not really like, if you want to do that, there Nova Scotia. There are a couple of Facebook groups in Nova Scotia that specifically are set up to have people put their kit number up, and then people check and see if they're matched. So just look for Nova Scotia DNA group, and you will find one. We're not
Hmm.
really able to handle that capacity group here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we also have, I'm just going to pop a few up here because we're getting some comments here. So
Albion, Maine.
Cindy is
Yeah.
from Maine, our first American watcher person that said where they're from. And we have Carolyn Black is from Nova Scotia.
Truro. Yeah.
Families in, yep.
Bernier, I've never heard that name before.
No, that's
Dixon,
interesting.
Liverpool.
Dixon.
Collins, oh, Collins and Freeman from Liverpool. It's like Smith in Liverpool. That's very common surnames for the Liverpool area. She is totally a Nova Scotia person. But it doesn't sound as if she's talking about my Nova Scotia roots, so it doesn't sound like she lives in Nova Scotia. Do you live in Nova Scotia,
Yeah.
Carolyn?
Let us know where you're at, Carolyn, since your roots are growing here, obviously very strongly, because I see a lot of familiar names there. Carrie Nash, are the city directories for Halifax and Dartmouth available online?
Okay. Yes and no. So it's some aren't. There are no, and you have to go and look at more than one resource. If you look at Nova Scotia Archives, which is easily Googled, you will find they have a couple of years of directories online.
Okay.
Then if you look Library and Archives Canada, again, Google it, they will have some online. There are a couple online at places like Ancestry, the subscription, but there is nowhere where there is a complete set of the directories.
Oh, so you have to go fishing around to
Exactly.
find.
Oh,
Cindy's
sorry, I've got a
followed the,
mosquito in this room, so if you
ah,
see me doing this, that's
mosquitoes trying to get out of the heat, get in the building.
why.
Ancestors from Central Nova there, Nova
Noah
Scotia.
Road, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep,
Blois,
Davison,
Harvey. I
Boyce,
recognize a
Harvey,
lot of
yep.
those. Um,
Funny how there are really Nova Scotia names. Not that there aren't lots that don't pop up, but there's sort of these traditional Nova Scotia names for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, um, Sherry's
I
in
wish I was
Calgary.
there. I'm in Calgary.
We wish you were
We
here
wish you were
too.
here too, Sherry.
Yes. Some googly eyes there from Maureen. Thank you, Maureen, for watching. Okay, so Kelly says 1910. I have to go back and remember what we were talking about.
Oh, 1910.
My
Okay, I don't
question,
remember.
oh, that's the adoption and
Oh, the era of adoption. Okay, that's good
yeah.
to know. I will see if I can find out an answer for her
Okay, but
of where
send in
she
the
might be.
email there, please, Kelly, because sometimes when we get off here, it's hard to remember
We
everything.
forget.
Yeah, well, we're like that. Iris, Iris Shea,
Oh,
there.
oh, I've got she's given me a kudos on the DNA. Well, that's just the beginning.
It's
And
good. So
Ira, you do live in HRM, so you could come to the sessions.
sign up. So do members get a cheaper rate on these
Yes, they
workshops?
do. Yep. As I
What
say
a
off the top.
segue, huh?
Yeah. Another member benefit.
$39 per year. So yeah, so sign up, go on our website. It's on the left-hand side. It says join us or renew. It's
Yeah.
very easy. If you don't want to pay by credit card, no worries. Send a check. Print. There's a downloadable sheet there. You just click it, fill it out, print it off, fill it out, send it with a check. No big deal. And yeah, so it's always good to be a member. So Maureen, I don't know if you can see all of
Oh,
this.
right, Maureen Manouge. That's a good Acadian name. She visited Chesapeake, and in
L'acadie
the
de Chesapeake
section
last week.
I have never, Maureen, thank you for reminding me about that, because I knew that there was one there. I have never actually been there, and I didn't know the extent of it. So that's great to know. It sounds as if they had quite a lot of genealogy there. So it might be worth a road trip sometime.
So all the Acadians should go, and other people, But no, I mean, if it's a good place to do research,
Yeah.
and I'm sure they would like
Manouche and
to
Dench. Oh,
have people there. I know here at GANS, when I come in, it's always really wonderful to see the people here using the facility, because so many
hmm.
people work so hard to keep it all, organized and together, and takes a
Yeah,
lot of hard
the
work.
summer and the early fall is very busy for us here because
Mhm.
we are most of the time just open 3 days a week with the occasional Sunday.
Right.
And we have a lot of American visitors or visitors from other parts of Canada who this is their opportunity. So we're
Yes.
trying to do the expedited version. And that's where, as we've mentioned before, and it's on the main page of our website, is that it is really great if you can give us some notice. It's great for you, not just for us. It's great for you because then when you do come in, we've done a little prep and we can zone right in on where you should be
Right.
looking. Whereas otherwise we have to kind of go by not, we don't have everything in our heads. We try, but we really
You
don't.
sound like you do.
And no, and it's sometimes you know a whole lot about certain areas simply maybe because you've done research in that area, but they're the odd one. I'll take Cumberland County because somebody just mentioned I know very little off in the top of my head about
Right.
Cumberland County. But one thing is that with genealogy, my experience has been is that way early on when I was doing some research, I took a couple of courses in the methods and how you and really once you understand the methods, you can almost go anywhere.
Oh,
It
cool.
doesn't, you don't have to specifically know because you know how to approach it. You know what things you're looking for. They might have different names in different places and parts of the world, but basically you're looking at. So it's preparation. And that is always very helpful. And there's so many resources out there now that you can get a little bit of
So
prep.
where did you say where you took that course on the methods?
Excuse me, I'm just doing the mosquito again. Um, uh, actually, I took it's called the National um, Institute of Genealogical Studies, and it
Hmm.
is started as a Canadian institution many years ago. But it covers you can get certificates in records from gosh Germany, the US, Canada, Australia, whatever. There's all kinds of different things. And it's all online. So you never have to leave home. And the courses are about 6 weeks. And the good news is, and you'll like this, Tressa, another segue, a member benefit is that you can get I think it's 10% reduction on courses if you're
There you
a member.
go.
Yeah.
I think it's important to be a member for places. It
Yeah.
helps the place and it helps you and it helps make it a well-rounded and flushed out environment for everybody.
Exactly. If we didn't
Yeah,
have members, we wouldn't be here today talking.
right, right, exactly.
Mm.
Let's keep going. There's more. Charlene Vino, where should it go for a test and the best one to get? I'm
Oh,
assuming that she's
okay.
talking about DNA.
About DNA. Okay, that's again a question that's pretty hard to answer in this format, but you don't have to go anywhere for a test. There are, it gets sent to you in the mail, and you either, depending on the company, you either spit or you swab your cheek.
Hmm.
And so there's nothing, it's not like you have to get blood taken, or it's not like CSI on television
It's
when they're
not
doing
invasive.
forensic DNA.
Yeah.
So there are about 5 different companies. And what I'm going to suggest to you, Charlene, is that you Google Blaine Bettinger, and DNA, and you will get led to one of his many resources and look for one of the resources where he talks about the pluses and minuses of the different companies.
Can you just spell his name again? It's
Yeah,
Bett.
Blaine, and Blaine is Blaine,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's Bettiner.
Up there for people. Oh.
Yeah, and he, really for looking for the basics of things, because it wouldn't be proper for me to say this company's better than another company as representing GANS, but they all have different pluses and minuses, and it depends on what your needs are. But it's very easy. They mail the test out to you. Tressa actually showed this way back on one of your earlier sessions.
Yeah.
You showed the DNA, and they mail the test to you. You take the test, you put it back in a thing, and usually you have to do a little thing online in the company. Some of the companies are purely DNA testing, like Family Tree DNA. Other companies like Ancestry or MyHeritage are companies that also have, a genealogy database. So they have two things going on. But yeah, it really depends on what your preferences are. And the other thing I always tell people is look for the sales. So around, because every one of them has sales. And I don't know, Charlene, if you're in Canada or the United States, but you want to be aware that some of them the price will be in US dollars. So you need to just be aware of that. And others are not. They'll quote you the Canadian price if you're in Canada. And it's still, and it's once you pay for the test, you never have to pay again. It's not as if you have to keep renewing every year. You make a one-time payment for the test and the results. So unless the company goes completely bust, which I don't think so. And so
Not
it's
in this
simple.
robust
No,
society of wanting to know your
no.
DNA.
And,
That's for
and the
sure.
whole thing is I always have to do my little qualifier on the ethnicity profile that you receive when you do a test, because sometimes people, particularly on Ancestry, because you've probably seen the commercials on television, and people just want, they're not people who do genealogy. They only want to do it for ethnicity, and therefore if they have matches to you and you try and contact them, you'll never hear from them because they've done their ethnicity and that's it. And the ethnicity you have to take with a grain of salt. It's getting better, but it is not a perfect science, and they all are different. Sometimes people say, I don't understand. I did a test at Ancestry and then I did a test at MyHeritage, and they don't have my ethnicity exactly the same. Well, it's not that they're scam or anything like that. It's that they're using different, what they call reference populations. So at MyHeritage tends to have a lot more European people in it. So they may be using more Europeans. I see we have a note here that Ancestry has a sale on right now. Yeah, always look for a sale. Never
Yeah.
pay full price. It's
Yeah.
just they have them about 5 times a year, and often they're focused around holidays. So this is the Ancestry one is probably a Labor Day one.
Yeah. Yeah. I see around
Yeah.
Thanksgiving and Christmas
Oh,
and
Mother's
Father's
Day, Mother's
Day.
Day. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the usuals.
Father's Day, especially. But you can't find something for your dad, buy him a DNA test. Yeah, of course. So Charlene says she's in Halifax, actually. So you can come over, Charlene, and
Yes.
take the workshop, the
I
two.
would, yeah. Just keep an eye on the website. If you're not a member, keep either join or keep an eye on the website, and then you'll get the information about the workshops and the prices, because it's not finalized. That's why I can't say. But you will also get workshop number 2, which is more the practicum, the hands-on. Is everyone will get a free DNA worksheet, which is really quite interesting. These were things I'd never, there's all sorts of tools online and they're all great. But sometimes for beginners, having something like this worksheet is something that is actually prepared by a genealogy people out in British Columbia. And it's very, very useful to start, because if you, especially depending on your heritage, when you get your results back, you may get tons of them and you think, well, what do I
Well,
do?
what am I going to do? Yeah.
Yeah, so this kind of helps you to
A little
calm down.
overwhelming. Yeah. You'll be the expert in DNA on your family once you know what you're doing.
So
Excuse me.
Charlene, she's keen. She will for sure. I'm
Yes,
looking. I've
yes.
got your name now, Charlene. I'll be looking for you.
Where's Charlene? Get your membership, Charlene. You can get a discount on the workshop, or unless you're already a member. Are you at Archives? Is that
No,
no?
no.
So I'll tell you where we are. We are at 33 Ochterlony Street in Dartmouth, Suite 100. So it's just there up from the Dartmouth water front, the
Alderney, yeah. Very.
Alderney landing there. So it's very easy to get to. You can take the ferry over if you should want to, and we're
Yeah.
right up the hill a little bit.
In
I put the
Quaker
web
Landing. The building's
Quaker
called
Landing.
Quaker Landing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Quaker Landing, and
Not Quaker House, but Quaker Landing, because on the
it's
same
great.
street there's the Quaker House, which is a museum. Quaker Landing is 33, yes. And
Very easy to find. Very
it is.
easy.
Like, honestly, I live in Halifax and I come over via the ferry, and it's literally like 5 minutes
Yeah.
walk from the ferry. And it's so pleasant to come on the ferry, like no matter how irritated I am with life. After a little sail
Being
across
on the
the harbor.
water for a second doesn't hurt.
Yeah, we're not,
Although
and just
November might be different.
that's true. But just to clarify why we are not at the archives, is that sometimes people get confused with us being part of the provincial government because of our name, the Genealogical Association of Nova Scotia. We are just like the Lunenburg Genealogy Society or we are a nonprofit organization, and we're not part of government.
Right. No government funding. It's a charity, actually. So if
Yeah.
you don't want to become a member, but you feel touched by anything that's going on here or speaks to you and think, hey, I'd like to
Yeah.
donate some money, you can certainly do that online too on the
You can.
website. So I
Yep.
put the website up there. That has everything. So there's a resource library there that you should go and check out. That's probably one of the hot spots. You can get your membership, join us or renew. You can find the email address, the phone number, and the physical address. Everything is there. Somebody asked me about workshops and events, and I didn't see a lot of them online on the website yet. So
Yeah, I
maybe that will get
usually,
updated
once
soon.
September arrives, you'll probably see more of a schedule of things,
Okay.
because the those things are being finalized now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So also, I just want to make sure that I've covered everybody. Thank you, everybody, for watching and for all of your questions and everything like
Exactly.
that. So the office is open Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 9:30 to 3:30, and the occasional Sunday. Those are listed on the website, so you can go
Yes.
and check out the Sunday dates if you work during the week and you want to pop over on the weekend. Again, we're at 33 Ochterlony. We're at novascotiaancestors.ca online. And obviously, you know where we are on Facebook because you're here. So share this video. You never know who might be interested in looking. If you have any queries for Peggy, or if you think we could help you in any way, send an email. Maybe we can. It is volunteer driven, so some people are experts in different things, and we can, pass it off. And sometimes it takes a little time, just because people might have to look into a few things. Members do get priority, that's for sure.
Oh,
And if you're
absolutely.
coming to visit, give a couple weeks notice, send an email and say, hey, we're going to pop
If you're
by.
from away,
If you're
if
from
you're just
away,
in town,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
If
different.
you're coming on vacation,
Mhm.
give some notice, and maybe a few things can get pulled off the shelves to point in the right direction. And I think that's it.
Yep. And I
Anything to
would
add?
like to say thank you. We've been really pleased to have Tressa helping us out this
Welcome.
summer. We're glad that she has Nova Scotia roots and that she came to spend the summer here, and that it's been something that has been very, very helpful. And and I know many people have enjoyed having
Oh,
these
good.
sessions.
Good.
And
I'm
so,
glad.
again, thank you very much, Tressa.
Oh, you're very welcome. I had a great time too. And I think that we may, do some things together in the
Who
future.
knows?
So
Exactly.
keep your eyes peeled, everyone.
Exactement.
So thank you very much. We have been online for a long time. This
I
is our
think
longest
so.
one ever. So thanks very much,
Yeah.
everybody, and have a great fall.
Okay. Bye bye
Bye.
now.